Welcome back to Duel podcast with your host Alicia Solomon and myself Megan Hines, where every week we talk the challenge and we are pitting a cap on the Challenge World Championship, with this being the final. And they had them on the Polar Express this whole episode, and I just want to say that was the best part of this final.
You think so?
Yeah, because they had them on edge,
Oh,
especially the overnight part.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't Jack and Trey. I'm sorry. Just it wasn't the story wasn't given to me. TJ dressed up as a conductor. It just wasn't hitting for me. The music was taking me out. Like, please, let's not even talk about it, or let's talk
Yeah,
about it actually because we have to.
yeah, it was because it was giving. I really wrote Snowpiercer, and then I was like, "No, this is also Polar Express." It was a mix of the two because of the outfits that they had to wear. I'm like, "This is y'all already leaning into this," but go
It
off.
reminded me of that one episode of Pretty Little Liars where they were on the train and they were fighting with masks trying to see who's A. Like, I don't know what was what was happening with the train, like whose idea it is, but it just had to go for me. I'm sorry. It just
Yeah,
wasn't it.
yeah, no. So we are. So we come up with from last week's episode of them starting the final at night. They meet TJ at the train station at the dot of night, and it's called the Fear Express, where they'll be traveling and having their sleep time in, and it drops them off in the middle of nowhere later on. And the following morning, they play Loops of Hell, where they have to run a trail with four different loops and hit different checkpoints as they carry their own canisters. And off top, Jordan and Cass had a good lead against everybody else, with Troy and Casey right behind them, Danny and Tori, and then Sarah and Theo. But off the top, even as Kaz and Jordan were in the lead, Kaz was already struggling because she had a cramp off the bat.
Yeah, I just felt bad for Kaz. I feel like Jordan just kept pushing her limits, which I mean he should have because they were trying to win $500,000. But like it was just so difficult listening to Kaz just complain at each and every checkpoint that was going on. It was like, girl, either you're gonna give up or not. Like she just kept complaining, I can't. And it was saying like it's really Anissa 2.0, but can actually like finish the final. Like he was just saying the same thing. Turn those like I can into I can't. All this other motivational Gary V crap that he usually is talking, and she actually pulled through this time. Like she actually, I'm really like happy for Cass because it would have been a long showing if she would have quit at some checkpoints.
Yeah, like she messed up the streak to do that. And at one point, Troy and Casey passed them. And after in the last place, Sarah and Theo, he decided to do a little jog. And when he did that, he rolled his ankle and he could not compose himself for like for a while. And he was just struggling.
Yeah, I don't know what convinced him to do that, but also it's like things happen. Like this is the part of the final where literally anything can happen, and at one wrong step someone can be out of the game or someone can hurt themselves and injure themselves. And that's literally what we saw with Theo. Like it didn't happen before, so it wasn't like a lingering injury. It happened when he was running. He tripped over his own self, essentially, or the rock tripped him, however he wants to put it. And that was the end of Theo.
Yeah, it reminds me how last season when Jordan decided to go off the path and that led to Nisa having her injury. I'm like, stop running and don't hurt yourself, please.
Well, I mean, this time it was him actually running on having to run on the trail rather than last season when Jordan was like telling Anissa like, "Hey, girl, let's run through the woods, Justin Timberlake style," and literally Anissa just ends up injuring herself. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, you decided to be the man in the woods and got your partner injured. This is all on Theo.
Yeah,
Like, two left feet, it might have cost you. Like, just saying.
Yeah, and that was the start of a bad first day of the final for him. And people get to the first checkpoint station where Casey and Troy choose Wait For It, which was the smaller version of what they did in the qualifier. Tori and Danny chose to do Throwing Shade, where they had to get three in a row of these little bullets into a bin. And as they were starting to do that, Danny called himself Steph Curry. And immediately we see him just brick into the bin. And I was like, sir, you're not Steph. Stick to football.
I mean, I don't know if he saw what happened to Steph, but Steph ain't make it, buddy. So, I mean, what you want to do now? I mean, I'm glad that he did make it, but it's like, okay, I like he dragged it with that comp. I'm not gonna hold you. Like, why would you even go that far? Like, I get you're trying to do the shooting analogy, but please.
You know, I'm like, not everybody is Steph. It's okay. It's okay. And Kaz and Jordan did crack the code, and Theo and Sarah were stuck with the nasty smoothie. And Kaz and Jordan were able to finish the code first. However, there was this discrepancy that was shown online about the code and the equation itself, the puzzle itself, because their answer was 42 when people they figured the puzzle out themselves, and I did too as well, and it was 62. But apparently you can do two ways, but I feel like it was really supposed to be 62, and everybody else did 42 during the rest of checkpoints. But I'm like, it was 62.
So, are we saying this is a conspiracy to get Jordan to win? Like, where are we going with this?
I don't know, because like everybody else had that same answer. I'm just like, the producers, do they not read their own things? Because however they got 42, that was not, to me, not the right answer.
Okay. Well, I mean, at this point, I don't know what to say about it because if that's the case, then the other person who did the puzzle later on shouldn't have gotten that answer. Like, but we know this with production and how they kind of go through finals sometimes. Sometimes people make it and they didn't either have an opportunity to make it or they got pushed into an opportunity. Like, let's just call it what it is. They got a layup.
Yeah, because sometimes math is hard. And we've known this on the challenge forever. And people on the show can be wrong a lot, even producers. And I feel like they just are like, oh yeah, it's 42. It's fine. But when you read it, how the puzzle was, it was 62. But that's neither here or there. After they finished their cold first, Tori and Danny were next, finishing finally throwing shade, and then right behind them were Tori and Casey, and Theo and Sarah were still trying to get that smoothie down, which it was disgusting as well. Is I think that was also a remnant of the qualifier as well, because they had to do that in that first qualifier.
Yeah, I don't like the throwing up. I usually try to fast forward through it because at some point it's just a little too much vomit for me. Like too much people throwing up, hacking. I just can't with that. But at least they made it down. Given that Thea was injured and you know this was like their last checkpoint and moving forward to like getting to the second checkpoint, it's like all right, at least they finished. You know.
Yeah. And then at the next checkpoint stop, Kaz and Jordan did Wait For It. Tori and Danny also did Crack the Code. And Casey and Troy, they also did the Nasty Smoothie. And they all went to their third laps after that. Kaz is still unwell with her breathing. Her cramp in her leg was gone, but she was struggling with that breathing on that last lap. That's the second to last lap. And Casey's quads were burning. Because, mind you, the night before, she just did a hall brawl. And now she's running up the hills in whatever that Kate Remember song is. She was doing all of that.
Yeah, I mean, given the Harborough situation where she had to go against Emily twice, and now all of a sudden, like, she literally has to do 4 miles and like treacherous like trails and all this other stuff like that. Like, that's just how it goes sometimes. But I would say, give it to her credit, she never stopped. She kept going at all times, even when it looked like she was ready to cave in. Like, there were multiple times I was like, damn, this is it for Casey and Troy. This is the end for Casey and Troy. This is like, I kept saying that. But to her credit, she kept going like the whole time and she didn't stop. And I think partly because Troy was just like not quitting at all. Like, Troy was at one point put the girl on his back and carried her like West Kenny style, like literally just carry on the back and just everybody get out the way and we trying to get this money.
I was gonna throw shade at another partner of hers in the past, and the final one, I'm not gonna do that.
We have a couple more weeks. Don't worry, we'll get to him.
So as they're all going there, and Theo and Sarah are still at checkpoint 2, everybody else they finished checkpoint 3, and Sarah was telling Theo like, "Hey, if you want to, basically, essentially, if you want to quit, just let me know. It's okay because you are not well." But she's giving him that out, like, if you want to quit, just let me know. I'm fine with it.
I mean, I guess shout out to her too for doing that because she probably could at any other point could have been like, you know what, forget it. Like, he's not moving forward. Like, she could have kept trying to push him even though she seen that he was injured, but I'll give her credit that she was like, "Hey, if you want to quit, let's quit." And I think partly because last season she had so many people that quit during her final. Like, I don't know if her experience is different because when Theo was last in the final, they went through the whole spiel. He went second, all of that. So he's been through exactly a final and like to the very end. For her, it's like she's kind of breezed through some checkpoints and was the only one, last person standing, essentially. So she really doesn't understand like how treacherous it could really be to like finish to the end. I don't know how much she wanted to push Theo, but I'm glad that she didn't push him farther than he can go.
Yeah. And they got everyone else went to the next checkpoint, the final one, and Jordan Kaz and Tori Danny both had to do the smoothies, but Jordan Kaz had it first, and so Tori and Danny were just waiting for Kaz to finish her smoothie. All the while, Casey and Troy made it, and they did break the code as well. And as Tori and Danny started, Troy and Casey were basically almost done, and they finished their code first, while Tori and Danny, who might as well, Danny was struggling with that smoothie. Like, we literally have shots of him like gulping it out, and then once he was done, he just like threw it, and that was it.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of these smoothie eating segments. Like, they really just make me cringe.
Like, it was all over him, like all over his beard, and I'm just like, this is not good.
Mm, mm-mm, mm-mm.
Like, I'm mad. It's still in my brain. Like, I can't get it out of my head. I have to watch something else to get it out of my head because like it's just there, and I'm like, no. Mm-mm. And Theo was still looking really bad. On their trek to the next checkpoint, and basically this was their moment. Like, hey, we're done. We're quitting. We're gonna be medically DQ'd. He sat down on the side of the road as the medics came, and he was wheeled off, and they're out of the game. And finally the remaining three went back to the train, and TJ told them that they're in the medically DQ'd, and the rest of the group got to get IVs to help them rehabilitate from that first day.
Oh, but the kicker, it can only be one person that gets the IV and not the whole team. So now it's kind of like the people who've been hurting the most, i.e. Kaz, i.e. Casey, like they're the ones who are going to be able to get treatment. And it's kind of like, damn, that's messed up, but it's something's better than nothing. And I don't think I've ever seen them literally give them medical attention in the middle. of them doing the final.
Yeah. Like this Fair Express, Polar Express situation, and what did what it needed to do with like getting help and having some type of recluse to recuperate. But that didn't last too long. Because TJ gave him keys for the next leg, but they're like, oh, you guys gonna get a little feast, and y'all gonna be able to dress up in some great Gatsby outfits.
That's essentially what it was. I mean, they were all either dressed like flappers or had suits on. So, I mean, that is what it was. It was a Great Gatsby themed, I guess, but on a train. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
gave me Pretty Little Liars so bad. Like it was just that one episode. It was like everyone thought this person was A. And it was like, why are y'all wearing these outfits? Like it's giving me PTSD.
Yeah, it was at this point where I'm like, because I knew the movie and the show Snowpiercer, it was giving that vibe because there was like a train on that train. I forget the name of it. Um, they would have like the high class people, and I'm like, this is reminiscent of that, but this is very twisted because as they were like eating and relaxing, they were not as much relaxing because they knew something was up. And then TJ pops back up and like, hey y'all gonna be playing a game called Insomnia, where y'all gonna be up all night, and if y'all try and go to sleep, y'all get shot by a shot caller. And at that moment, I was like, that is twisted, very twisted.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting the up all night. I honestly thought they were gonna do something outside, like running through a trail or something to run off the food. So, and it was just like you got to stay up all night. That is actually torture. Like after eating a meal, you all know we get the itis, and you go to sleep. So the fact that they had to stay up all night, honestly, I'm not surprised how they got through it. Like I'm glad that they all kind of worked together in that, but that was also kind of corny. But like as it goes, I just think that staying up all night and then having to go again in the morning is like, bro, y'all really trying it with this final.
Yeah, and only one team got an hour's worth of sleep, which was Kaz and Jordan because they finished that previous day on top, and Casey and Troy got 30 minutes of sleep. All the while, Danny and Tori, because they finished in third, they got 15 minutes of sleep. But they didn't get to sleep until probably like 5 o'clock in the morning because TJ put up on them at like 6 o'clock. Like, hey guys.
Yeah, I think by the time Jordan and Cass first went to sleep, it was probably like 5 o'clock. They got an hour, and then like the time kept going. So Casey and Troy went to bed at like 6:30, and then Danny and Tori, excuse me, went to bed at like 6:45. So TJ came in like at 7 a.m. and that was it for them. I mean, at least they got some sleep, and they did play it smart in terms of timing it out, so they get to the sun coming up and not knowing what time in the morning the final was going to start, but at least being able to get some sleep before you have to start a final.
Yeah. And Tori, at one point during that overnight thing, Tori and guys were on the floor, and Jordan and Danny were looking at them like, you better not fall asleep. Do not fall asleep. Because Tori was like looking cozy on that floor with that blanket. And Kaz at one point was just laying down and looked up like, I'm not asleep. I'm good.
Yeah, he
And
had to
that,
literally yell at her. Like he was like, Kaz, what are you doing? She just like popped up and she had to jump in the chair and change her positioning because she really got comfortable. I was like, if y'all know y'all not trying to sleep, why are you getting comfortable?
yeah, especially on the floor. Like, if I'm not sleeping on a couch and I happen to just lay on the ground with a blanket, I'm getting comfortable and I'm falling asleep. But I can't fall asleep because I gotta. If I want to fall asleep, I'm gonna to get shocked on my neck. So no. And as after TJ woke him up for the day two stuff, everybody was ready to take on the day. And Casey was like, "My body is weak. I can't. I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but it's weak, and I'm just like, this is a repeat of what happened last time. And I'm like, I don't want it to end like that for her again.
I mean, she got injured the last time, right? Like
Yeah,
before she left. So technically, it's her body breaking down. Yes, that is causing her to be injured, but it's a little different than actively getting an injury and like having to continue on. Like, and then your partner, you know, doing what he did.
yeah. I was like, I just hope she tries to pull through at least because she still has a bit of a chance at least to try and make it a little bit more. Um, but now they're playing Race to the Finish, where they have to start riding bicycles to a stop point, and then once they're done with that, they have to navigate terrain to the finish line on foot. And I don't like this woman. Tori said she's afraid of bikes. I'm not scared of bikes. I just can't ride one. But she had childhood trauma about running into her neighbor's mailbox. And I was like,
Telling you,
what?
there's always a part of the show that I completely miss. When the hell did she say this in the show?
It was right before they went to the bikes. Well, no, it was right when they were
Bro,
getting on the bikes.
I know the bike riding happened because I remember Danny pushing her and telling her to keep going. That story never happened in my mind. Like me watching it straight up and down, that never happened. I'm so amazed that every time I can just tune her out and I'm literally watching the show.
I don't know how you do it, but yeah. But she said that, and I'm like, at that moment, I identified with her. Ran, I'm not scared of bikes. She was like, I'm scared of bikes, and I'm like, okay. But I'm like, someone did tweet like, oh, Tori said she's scared of bikes. They're gonna take bikes out of the challenge now. They're not gonna do that. Just because she's scared of bikes, she gotta face that fear. This is called the Fear
I wish they
Express.
would. I wish they would because then Darrell would have a lawsuit on his hands. As much times as Darrell has hollered and screamed and shivered on top of heights and said he does not want to do this, and every single time he comes back and there's heights, and if she says this one little thing and they never put bikes, come on, Darrell, I'll be your lawyer. I'm backing you up. We got evidence, brother. We got evidence.
I thought you was about to say something about the bike too. Cause I remember on, I think it was all one of the All-Star seasons when he was in his final, they had to build those bikes. They had to run it. I thought you was something about that, but no, a lot of people would have a lawsuit if they're like, "Oh, I don't want to do this," and they miraculously like get rid of the bikes. So she said that. That I just found that funny. I'm like, they're not gonna do that, but I get it because of story. Um, but like you said, like at one point, Danny did try to help her out, and she was able to navigate on the bike. But Troy and Casey were actually in first place, and Kaz was running right behind them. But because Casey's body was going downhill as they were going up that incline, Kaz and Jordan surpassed them, and that was when Troy decided to piggyback Casey to get them a little bit more distance.
But how long did he carry it? He didn't even carry it for that long. Like, it was cute, like the heroic, like oh my gosh, putting her like all that, whatever. But by the time we looked up, like he was already up the mountain, and him and Casey were walking like side by side back up the mountain, and they got to the other checkpoint. So I know he didn't carry her for that long.
Yeah, I don't know. Because even Danny tweeted that they took out a lot of that final. So they just clipped, like, yeah, her getting on the piggyback and then that. Like, they might have been, she might have been on his back for like probably a cool couple minutes or so, but that was it. But yeah. And then Kaz and Jordan made it to the next checkpoint, which was a puzzle that they used with the keys, and Troy and Casey were right behind them, and Kaz and Jordan were fighting over what to do with this shifty puzzle, but they ended up completing it. And as Troy and Casey were still working on it, Danny and Tori were able to get there, and they were able to complete it. But it was just hard to see. Casey looked very exasperated because Troy just was like, "Hey, I'll just do it, get through this," and Casey was just trying to like harbor her leg.
Yeah. I mean, Troy basically carried her part of the rest of this final, like throughout the way. I mean, the only thing is that she kept going and she didn't stop because physically she was having a hard time. But honestly, throughout all the checkpoints, Troy was carrying her. Like Troy finished the key puzzle, Troy finished the, throwing puzzle and like into the hoop. Like he was finishing everything for them. So again, Troy's a great partner. I know she had a moment where she broke down and she, tried to, talk to Troy and was like, listen, you've been a great, amazing support and, you've been there. Because she probably really hasn't seen that in a partner in a long time because all of like her body was okay in the other finals. You know what I mean? That she won.
Yeah, and Tori and Danny passed them up because they finished their puzzle, and it was just now a race to get to the final key and race to the finish. As they were getting up the terrain, Kaz was struggling a bit again, but Jordan was really trying to push her to her best, and they got to the final key. And once they did that, they got back down that mountain and got to the last area, and they make it to TJ first, and they win. Tori and Danny are right behind them, and Casey and Troy make it not too long after them, and they are in third. And that's how this ends. I feel like it was a little bit anticlimactic, not gonna lie.
You don't say. That sounded very anticlimactic. But I mean, I guess it just I don't know. It fell short, to say the least. Like watching the show, the last couple of episodes, and what the drama was giving, and how it was just flowing. I just think that was just like, okay, Jordan and Cass won. But I guess the buildup of Jordan and Cass wasn't enough for me because, like, it's a blur that she even had that conversation with him last week, just last week, about how he was speaking to her and him realizing his communication and all that in between them and their partnership. So, I mean, it's great to see that he can move on from that and like have that art because no shade, but the underlying like pedestals that was going on in this episode was a little ridiculous with some of the little pop-ins of what people do on the side, and it was just like, all right, enough of this because it's an agenda. I'll say the least. But what do I know?
Yeah. It was just funny, and I think there's one of the tweets that in the thread, or I saw a tweet. It was like, it's funny how certain people would not play for themselves and BC that in Tori because she didn't play for herself. Like it got to a point where like, yeah, I'm gonna help Jordan win. Look what happened. She should have listened to Danny. Danny was right this whole freaking time. I don't care if Jordan's your friend. Get him out. Because if you
I mean, yeah, he was saying this the whole time. Like Jordan is his biggest threat in the final, and look, they came in second place behind who? Jordan Cass.
yeah. So yeah, I have no other thoughts. That because it, it wasn't that great. It was not great for win. It was like the ending was just like whatever. Like they got up the terrain, got to the keys, and got down the little terrain, got to the finish line. That was it. So I feel like day one was a little bit better. It had more to do. I think day two obviously didn't have a lot to do.
Well, it was only half a day, and they were basically going off of the last leg, which is they didn't really sleep. So, give credit to Tori and Danny for finishing with 15 minutes of sleep. But at the same time, like I didn't expect them to do so much more after that because then that would have been a little ridiculous if they went the whole second day. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah,
crazy.
at least give me a little bit something more because we didn't get and like nothing crazy for like another checkpoint on like that second day. It was just that one, and then that was it. Like at least give me like two little checkpoints, and then go up. I guess it kind of getting the key at the checkpoint, but that wasn't much. It just got up to the top of the hill, got the key, came back down. Like it that should have been like a puzzle or something to do.
Yeah, I could see that.
But yeah, that was the final. We're gonna get into these tweets because, as usual, there are some good ones and good commentary. So the first tweet. So Theo quit and Casey had a busted leg. So Tori essentially handed Jordan a win. And y'all expect me to watch
No.
this.
No, I don't. I really don't.
As I like to say, this is not friends. This is a challenge. I'm not going to play friends to see somebody beat me in a final. I'm not doing that. But that's Tori's MO. Okay, that is. So that's that. The next tweet. Sarah won by default and lost by default. I love a conclusion.
That's funny. That's definitely full circle for Sarah because yeah, last season was by default for sure, and then this season it ends the same. Like your partner can't continue, neither can you.
Yeah. Unfortunate that Theo got hurt, but hopefully glad that he's healthy now. But just the cards you dealt with. And the cards she got last time worked in her favor. This time, just did not. The last tweet. I'm with Danny. Throw these heavy hitters and eliminations more often, cause who the fuck wants second place?
I mean, it's not a new concept. Like
Yeah,
Danny was not incorrect in trying to get them out because of course he's trying to win. Like Jordan has won previous he's Danny's won before and he knows like even though the situation happened last season where there were so many people who defaulted out and he was one of the last men standing, it could have easily went the other way for Danny. And like he would have had to gone against Tyson and Ben. I think Ben was in there, right? I don't think so.
yeah,
But like it was all these different people that was like, strong competitors. So I think Danny's kind of like, hey, let me get them out the same way the other guys got out so that I can win again. Like that's just it.
yeah. Like, if only they. The only problem is if because he's attached to Tori. If he was just anybody else, it would have been no brainer to just get numbers and go at those other teams. But because he was a Tory, that plan was not on cue. And Tori didn't have the self awareness to even think about that. Like, yo, I'm trying to play for myself. She plays for everybody else, who at one point they said to play for themselves, i.e., what Jordan did in the like past couple weeks with that deal he made with Yes and Emily. He did that for him and Kaz's chances, and that was selfish on his part. But that's what you do at a certain point. Tori didn't do that at no point. At every turn, she wanted to try and protect everybody else and throw herself in for them. And they would barely do that for her. So, next time, Danny, if you decide to come back, do not pick Tori. Because that's not going to work out for you. It will get you to a point. You got your second place. I'm not going to lie, I did. But the extra stuff, no. I'll pass.
I mean, cool. I definitely agree he shouldn't be teamed up with what's her name anymore, but yeah, I don't see it for her. Danny, next time, just I hope it's an individual contest that he can just run it by himself and just run numbers essentially. And honestly, this the whole thing with Sarah last week and how he really saw that she was possibly thinking of picking Emily, and also it's just like just watch yourself. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And then I will say it was a good season for Troy and Casey. Um, I'm giving Casey a little bit, but she pushed through this final. She at least finished it. Even with her body aching, she played well. Like they were really good at elimination this season, and they killed it. Like they made it to the final, got third, and they really showed improved. But Troy was really like the one I was really like rooting for, aside from Danny in this. I didn't really care. Like Casey was like cool a bit this season, got a little bit too big for bitches at points, but I didn't mind her. And Troy was really good. He was a good partner towards Amber, and he just adjusted and showed improved in the eliminations, and that's why he won on Australia.
Shout out to Troy. That's all I got. I'm not.
But yeah, that is all the tweets I had. One tweet I didn't want to mention because we had talked about it already, but yeah, those are all the tweets and commentary for me.
I mean, that's the end of this, I guess. But we'll be back very soon as Challenge USA 2 was announced today. And so that'll be back July 6th. So we have another season of USA coming, which means Big Brother, Love Island, Survivor, Challenge People, all of them all together. And so that's going to be another season of that. But thank you guys for listening. If you would like to follow us on Twitter, you can at Dual Lines Pod. You can follow Megan on her Twitter at Megan Hines. You can follow myself at ace_s5. And you can watch this on YouTube if you're listening at Dual Lines Podcast. And we'll be back very soon to talk more of the challenge. Thanks, guys, for listening. Bye.
Bye.